Hi everyone, back again. So that was our first part, looking at the shelters that the Aboriginal people used. The second part will be looking at their food. And so I'll move straight across into our PowerPoint presentation. And this picture shows people in Sydney Harbour. The Aboriginal people were fishing. Sydney Harbour was a source of a lot of the fish for the people, and shellfish such as oysters and mussels that grew around the edges of the harbour. They're still there now, but we probably just don't eat them. This picture shows women fishing in small bark canoes, and it was usually the women's job to fish, although the men and the women would use a line with a hook on it, and they would take it out in their boats. You can see here we have got one with smoke coming out of the boat, and it looks like she's got a child in there with her as well. And what they would do is, in the bottom of their canoe, they would make a fire, and as soon as they caught the fish, instead of gutting them like we would today, they just put them straight onto the fire to cook them, and then they brought them in to their family after that. And it's really interesting. You would think because these canoes are made from bark that the fire would just burn all the way through the bottom. However, they made wet clay. They put wet clay down and wet seaweed to protect the bottom of the boat. Okay. So men also did fish, but they traditionally didn't use the line and the hook. They would use the spear, and we'll see that in a minute. Okay, here's our next, not a photo, it's a sketch of more people fishing in the harbour. It says Port Jackson. Port Jackson is the name of Sydney Harbour. They made a fire in their canoes. Again, we can see that there. This one's got two children and what looks like a mother and a father in their canoe. So it was probably quite a family type thing to do. Our next slide is showing men fishing, and here they are at night. The man is fishing with his spear, as I said before, and there's other groups of people around fishing as well. And then we'll just move on to this, which is a photo. So it's come from more modern times, but it is also a traditional way that the Aboriginal people caught fish in rivers. So not in the harbour, because the river needs to be flowing for this to work properly. And this is called a fish trap. This photo was taken from the Darling River, which is in Western New South Wales. However, they were used quite extensively across New South Wales. And what would happen is the Aboriginal people arranged the rocks in the river to create paths for the fish to swim so that they could catch them at the end. So you would see that these pieces of, as the water flows through down here, there would be someone at the end here ready to catch the fish because they've become trapped in that piece of water there. So that's how they arranged the stones carefully so that they were able to do that. And this is, this would have been woven by a woman, and this is another type of fish trap, and they would just put that into the water and the fish would swim in through the hole there and they would get trapped in there. Okay. Now in coastal areas like Sydney, while they had a lot of food from the ocean, but they also had kangaroos. It's hard to believe that we had kangaroos hopping around in Sydney, but they certainly did. And but also in areas that weren't beside the harbour, the Aboriginal people used a lot of the animals like kangaroos, wallabies, snakes and wombats, and they only ever killed what they needed, and they just would take that back to feed their families, and then the next time that they needed food they would go out and get some more. So there was no way for them to store the food. They just killed what they needed for that day and maybe the next day, and then they would go out again. Okay. And this one is a rock carving of a whale. So you can see the whale's tail there and the fin, and that's the head of the whale up there. These rock carvings are still around Sydney now. I walk past one very frequently on the way between Bronte and Bondi on the coastal walk there. But this one is of a whale. Now, the Aboriginal people weren't able to go out and kill a whale, but they would, from time to time, a whale would wash up on the beach, and then they would all come and take what they needed from that whale, and they would probably have a big celebration because there was plenty of meat there and all of the families would participate in that. Okay, now our next one is showing a man climbing up a tree, and he's cutting. You can see there he's got an axe in his hand and he's cutting footholes into the trunk of the tree so that he can climb up the tree. And he might have been looking for meat such as possums or birds or berries or fruit that might have grown in the tree. So you can see too how fit these people were. I mean, that must have been a really strong man there to be able to climb up that tree like that, just supporting himself with the axe and the footholds. Okay, this is a different type of food that they were gathering. This is a photo of women sitting in the bush, and they're using sticks to dig down into the earth to dig up the roots of plants, and they would take those plants back and cook them in the fire, and that would be a part of their dinner as well. So it wasn't just meat and fish, they also had plenty of plants and berries and nuts that they would gather from the bush, what we call today bush tucker. And this is a photo of the baskets that the women make to gather berries and fruits from the bush. They make these by weaving the longer leaves of grasses, and the one here at the back, which is the bark of a tree, is called a coolamon. And that was also used for gathering food, but it was also used for carrying babies when the babies were little, like a little basket for them. And I'm going to finish up there. The next thing we'll be looking at in our next part of the lesson is how we know that the Aboriginal people lived like this. I'll see you soon.